I never thought a single night could change everything. But that's the thing about life, isn't it? The smallest choices, the ones we don't think twice about, sometimes lead to consequences we never see coming. Looking back now, I wonder, was it really just an accident? Or had something already been set in motion, waiting for me to step into it? I still remember the smell of wine on my breath, the way the streetlights blurred as I walked. My heels wobbled on the pavement, my head light, my body warm from too many drinks, too much laughter, too much pretending. I wasn't fine. But I smiled. I laughed. I played my part. Then my phone buzzed. 3 words on the screen. Don't wait up. Nothing else. No, how was your night? No, see you at home. Just that. Like I was an afterthought. Like I wasn't even there. I should have been used to it. I told myself it didn't matter. But that night, those words, they felt heavier. Like something inside me had finally cracked. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the way my body swayed a little too far when I stepped off the curb. I felt myself falling. Then warmth. A hand. Strong. Steady. Careful. I blinked, my vision clearing just enough to see the face in front of me. Chris. My husband's son. For a second, neither of us moved. His fingers gripped my wrist, his eyes searching mine. There was a hesitation, a breath held too long, a silence that stretched too far. And then, he let go. I should have stepped back. Said something. Laughed it off. But I didn't. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. And I had no idea what that meant. Not yet. Not until later. Not until it was too late. I stepped back. Chris did too. The air between us felt different now, like something had shifted, something unspoken settling in the space where his hands had been. I muttered a thanks. He nodded, his jaw tight, his eyes unreadable. Neither of us said anything more. I turned away first, walking the rest of the way home, my breath unsteady, my heart drumming in my ears. Inside, the house was dark. Silent. I kicked off my shoes, my feet aching, my head still spinning, not just from the alcohol, but from something else. Something I didn't want to name. I went upstairs, peeled off my dress, and stood in front of the mirror. Tired eyes. Smudged lipstick. A woman who looked like a ghost in her own home. I climbed into bed. The sheets were cold. I stared at the ceiling, waiting for sleep, but all I could feel was the weight of something I couldn't explain. Mornings in my house were always the same. I'd wake up alone, my husband already gone. His side of the bed barely touched. Downstairs, I'd drink my coffee in silence, scrolling through my phone, checking a text thread that never had any new messages. Meetings all day. I'll be late. Don't wait up. Some days, there was nothing at all. I used to ask. Used to call. Used to send little reminders that I was here. That I existed. That I was still his wife. But after years of one-word answers, distracted nods, and half-hearted kisses on the cheek, I stopped trying. I stopped asking. Stopped waiting. Because after a while, you start to feel foolish for wanting something that isn't there. And in my house, there wasn't much left at all. It was big, clean, cold. The kind of house that looked perfect on the outside, the kind that whispered we have it all. But inside, it felt hollow. I moved through my days like a ghost. Dinners alone, empty conversations, nights spent staring at my reflection, wondering when I had become someone so easy to forget. And Chris noticed. Not right away. Not all at once. But little by little, he saw what my husband didn't. It was in the way his eyes lingered when I spoke. The way he actually listened. The way he asked how my day was and waited for a real answer. He saw when I was tired. When I forced a smile. When I laughed a little too hard at something that wasn't funny just to fill the silence. He saw the way I swallowed my disappointment when my husband canceled again. Chris was different. He had always been kind, always respectful, always easy to be around. But after that night, after that moment on the sidewalk, something felt different. I told myself I was imagining it. That I was being ridiculous. But then there were the small things. The way his eyes found mine across the room. The way his voice softened when he spoke to me. The way I caught him watching me sometimes, a flicker of something in his expression before he looked away. And the worst part? I noticed too. I noticed everything. And I didn't know if I wanted to stop. The night of the party started like any other. I wasn't even planning to go. I told myself I'd stay home, that I had no reason to be out drinking with people I barely knew. But then I looked around the house, empty, cold, silent. And I knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit at the kitchen table alone again, waiting for a man who never came home before midnight. So I went. I put on a dress that hadn't seen the light of day in months, brushed on a shade of lipstick I barely recognized on myself, and stepped out the door before I could change my mind. At first, I kept to one drink. Then another. The room was full of laughter, chatter, people clinking glasses, leaning in close to gossip and whisper. I laughed too. I smiled. I played along. But the longer I sat there, the more I felt it creeping in, that dull ache in my chest, the one I was so good at ignoring. And then my phone buzzed. I didn't need to look. I already knew. Don't wait up. 3 words, again. No have fun. No be safe. No see you later. Just another reminder that I was an afterthought. I set the phone down, gripping the glass in front of me, staring at the little reflections of light bouncing off the liquid. Maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was years of loneliness catching up to me all at once. But something in me cracked. I drank. Too much, too fast. And when I finally left, the ground beneath me felt unsteady, my body light, my head full of static. The air outside was cool against my flushed skin. The streetlights blurred into streaks of yellow, my heels clicking unevenly against the pavement. I wasn't thinking about where I was going. I just needed to move. Then suddenly, warm hands, steady grip. Whoa, careful. His voice. Familiar. Close. Chris. I blinked up at him, my vision hazy, my thoughts slow. He was frowning, his eyes searching mine. What are you doing here? My own voice sounded strange to me, softer, looser. I was just heading home. His grip on my arm didn't loosen. You're not okay. I tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. I'm fine. You're not. I pulled away, but my feet wobbled, and he was there again, steadying me before I could fall. Something about the way he touched me, gentle but firm, careful but present, made my throat tighten. I can walk you home, he said. I should have said no. But I didn't. We walked in silence at first, my steps uneven, his steady. The world around us was quiet, just the sound of our footsteps against the pavement, the distant hum of cars passing on another street. And then, before I could stop myself, the words slipped out. Sometimes I wonder if anyone really sees me anymore. I didn't know why I said it. Maybe because I was drunk, maybe because the night felt too big, maybe because the weight of being invisible for so long had finally pressed down too hard. I felt him slow beside me. A pause. A breath. When I turned to look at him, his eyes were already on me. There was something there. Something I didn't want to name. Something I couldn't take back. And then, just like that, he looked away. And the moment passed. But it had already happened. I woke up to a dull ache behind my eyes, the kind of headache that came from too much wine and not enough sleep. The room was still dark, the curtains drawn, but I could already tell the day had started without me. I turned onto my side, pressing my face into the pillow, willing myself to sink back into sleep. But the moment I closed my eyes, it came rushing back. Chris. His hands steady on my arms. His voice soft but firm. The way he looked at me. The way I looked back. And then, what had I said? Sometimes I wonder if anyone really sees me anymore. The words echoed in my mind, sending a slow wave of heat through my body. I groaned, covering my face with my hands. What was I thinking? Did I embarrass myself? Did he think I was pathetic? I tried to piece together the rest of the night. I remembered his grip on my wrist, the way he guided me home. I remembered the way he hesitated at the door, his eyes searching mine as if waiting for something, waiting for me to say something, do something. And then? Nothing. Just the door closing. Just me, standing there in the silence, feeling something. Something I couldn't explain. I forced myself out of bed, dragging my heavy limbs toward the bathroom. The mirror was unforgiving. My lipstick was smudged, my mascara faintly streaked beneath my eyes. I looked like a woman who had been caught in a moment she wasn't supposed to have. I splashed cold water on my face, exhaling slowly. It was nothing. A drunk night. A passing moment. It didn't mean anything. But as I made my way downstairs, my stomach knotted. Because I knew. I wasn't ready to see him. The sound of movement came from the kitchen. A chair scraped against the floor. The faint smell of coffee drifted through the air. And then, his voice. Casual. Easy. Morning. I froze in the hallway. His tone was normal. Maybe too normal. I stepped into the kitchen, my heart thudding a little too fast. He was leaning against the counter, coffee in hand, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't stood there on the sidewalk last night, looking at him like he was the first person to really see me in years. Like I hadn't said those words. Like he hadn't heard them. I forced a smile. Morning. I poured myself a cup of coffee, my hands a little too steady, too controlled. He didn't look at me right away. Or maybe he was avoiding looking at me. Or maybe I was imagining all of it. I wrapped my fingers around the mug, letting the warmth seep into my skin, waiting for something, anything, to break the silence. But nothing came, and that was worse. Because I didn't know if it meant he hadn't thought about it at all. Or if he had thought about it too much. Either way, I knew one thing for sure. The silence between us was louder than anything he could have said. And for the first time in a long time, the distance between me and my husband didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like something else. Something dangerous. The shift was subtle at first. Maybe it had already started long before that night, creeping in through the quiet spaces, the unspoken moments. Maybe I had just been too blind or too afraid to notice. But after that night, after those words slipped out of me like a confession I wasn't ready to face, something changed. It wasn't in the big things. It was in the smallest details. The way Chris lingered just a second longer when we crossed paths in the kitchen. The way his voice softened when he asked how I was. The way his eyes found mine across the room, only to flicker away just a little too late. It should have been nothing. And for a while, I told myself that's all it was. But then came the moments that blurred the lines. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen, staring at the coffee maker, frustrated. It had been broken for weeks, and I had asked my husband to fix it more times than I could count. Each time, he nodded absently, barely looking up from his phone, promising, I'll get to it. But he never did. I had gotten used to things like that. Used to small inconveniences piling up, to being the only one who noticed when something needed to be done. But Chris noticed. I didn't even ask. He was just there, rolling up his sleeves, inspecting the machine, tools in hand. Shouldn't take long, he said, not even looking at me. I stood there, watching him work, something twisting inside my chest. 10 minutes later, the machine was running perfectly. I should have just thanked him and moved on. But when I reached for a mug, he reached at the same time. Our hands brushed. It was barely a touch, nothing really. But I felt it. And I knew he did too. The air tightened between us. I looked up. His eyes were already on me. A second. Just one. Then, he pulled away. Cleared his throat. Stepped back like nothing had happened. And maybe nothing had. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had begun. After that, it was the chair in the dining room, the one with the wobbly leg that had been unsteady for months. I had learned to sit carefully, to adjust myself just right so it wouldn't tip. But one evening, I walked in and it was fixed. I ran my fingers along the smooth wood, pressing my weight onto it, testing. Solid. I glanced over. Chris was on the couch, eyes on the TV, like it wasn't even worth mentioning. But I knew it was him. It was never my husband. And maybe that's what made it worse. It wasn't just the things he did. It was the fact that he noticed it all. And then, there were the moments I couldn't explain away. Like the night we both reached for the same dish in the sink, fingers tangling under the running water. I pulled back too fast, my breath catching in my throat, but I felt it, that hesitation, that brief moment where neither of us moved. Like we were both waiting. For what, I didn't know. Or maybe I did. Then, there was the laughter. Too easy, too natural. A private joke shared over dinner, something small and stupid, but the way we laughed, deep, unguarded, a little too long, made my husband glance up from his phone. His eyes flickered between us. I felt my stomach drop. But then, just as quickly, he looked away, distracted, disinterested. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that none of it meant anything. But at night, when I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I wasn't thinking about my husband. I was thinking about Chris. The way he saw me. The way I felt seen. The way my body reacted when he was near, an awareness I hadn't felt in years. And the worst part? I didn't want it to stop. The night it happened, I was alone. My husband was away again. Another business trip, another empty house, another night spent in silence. I didn't even ask where he was this time. Didn't bother checking my phone for a message that wouldn't come. The house was too quiet, too still. So I poured myself a glass of wine. Just one, I told myself. Just enough to take the edge off. I was halfway through the glass when I heard the front door open. Chris. I glanced at the clock. It was late. I didn't expect him to be home. He stepped into the kitchen, his hair slightly messy, his shirt wrinkled like he had just come from somewhere important. He looked surprised to see me still up. Couldn't sleep? I shook my head, swirling the wine in my glass. He hesitated, then grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge. For a moment, it felt normal. Just another night, just another casual conversation. But then he leaned against the counter, watching me. Long day? He asked. I exhaled a small laugh. Something like that. His eyes didn't leave mine. Want some company? I should have said no. But instead, I lifted the bottle of wine between us, a silent invitation. He grabbed 2 glasses from the cabinet and sat across from me. We drank. Talked. It was too easy. Too comfortable. The kind of conversation I hadn't had in years. I didn't even realize how much I had missed it, the feeling of someone listening, someone responding, someone actually being there. And then, the moment. I reached for my glass. So did he. Our hands met, skin against skin. Neither of us moved. Neither of us pulled away. The air thickened, the silence between us stretching, wrapping around us like something alive. I swallowed. I should go to bed, I whispered. I expected him to step back, to nod, to break whatever this was before it went any further. But he didn't. He didn't move at all. His fingers stayed there, lightly brushing against mine, warm and unmoving. And in that second, one single second, I knew. If I didn't leave now, I wouldn't leave at all. I stood up too fast, my breath uneven. He watched me, waiting. But I couldn't look at him. I turned away, gripping the edge of the counter, grounding myself. The room felt too small, the air too thick. I forced myself to take a step. Then another. I made it to the stairs before I let myself breathe. And as I stood there, in the dark, my heart pounding against my ribs, I realized something. This wasn't just a moment. It was a choice. And I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep making the right one. I barely slept that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my pulse still uneven, my body still tense. Nothing had happened. Not really. But something had changed. I felt it in the way my hands wouldn't stop shaking when I touched my own skin. I felt it in the way my lips tingled with words I never spoke. I felt it in the way my body refused to forget the warmth of his hand against mine. And I knew, deep down, in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, that I had already stepped too close to something dangerous. When I finally drifted into sleep, it was restless. And when I woke up, everything was different. I could hear him moving downstairs. For the first time since he'd moved in, I hesitated before going down. I wasn't ready to face him. I wasn't ready for what his face might say. But I couldn't stay up here forever. So I took a breath, smoothed my hair, and forced my legs to move. I stepped into the kitchen. He was standing at the counter, coffee in hand, scrolling through his phone. His posture was stiff. Too still. "Morning," I said. He looked up, just for a second, then back down. Morning. It was normal. Too normal. He took a sip of his coffee, his eyes glued to the screen, his fingers tapping against the ceramic like he was waiting for something. I stood there, gripping the counter, unsure of what to say. I wanted to pretend nothing had happened. But I couldn't ignore the weight pressing against my chest, the thick silence stretching between us. I watched him carefully. The way his shoulders tensed when I moved. The way he avoided looking at me for too long. Did he feel guilty? Or was he waiting for me to say something? My stomach tightened. If I brought it up, I would have to admit there was something to bring up in the first place. So I said nothing. I made my coffee and sat at the table, my fingers wrapped around the warm mug, my mind replaying every second from the night before. The touch, the silence, the choice, and the fact that I wasn't sure if I had made the right one. Chris finished his coffee and stood up. "I've got to head out," he said. His voice was even, but I could hear it, the hesitation. I nodded, forcing a smile that felt wrong on my face. "See you later." He gave me a quick nod. Then he was gone. I sat there alone again. But this time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt loaded. Heavy. Like a bomb ticking down to something I wasn't ready for. That night, my husband came home. It was late. I had already climbed into bed, pretending to be asleep when I heard the front door open, the familiar sound of his shoes against the floor. I felt him walk into the room, heard him sigh as he pulled off his tie, the rustle of fabric as he undressed. Then the bed dipped beside me. I kept my breathing steady, eyes closed. Still, he shifted, turning toward me, his breath warm against my shoulder. And then, his voice. Low. "You've been acting strange lately." My stomach clenched. I forced my face to remain blank, my body to stay loose. I turned onto my side, blinking up at him, my expression carefully confused. "What do you mean?" He studied me for a moment. Then, he shook his head. "Nothing," he muttered, rolling onto his back. "Forget it." But I couldn't, because for the first time in a long time, he was paying attention. And that meant something. I just didn't know if it was already too late. The days that followed were slow, heavy. Chris kept his distance. Not in a way that anyone else would notice. My husband certainly didn't, but I did. He wasn't in the kitchen as much when I was. He didn't linger in the living room. He stopped looking at me for too long. It should have been a relief. But instead, it felt like something had been ripped away. I tried to tell myself it was for the best. That whatever had been brewing between us had ended before it could truly begin. That I had been given a second chance to step back, to set things right. But if that was true, why did I feel like something inside me had cracked? Why did the silence between us feel sharper than the moment when his hand brushed mine? I spent nights lying awake, replaying everything over and over. Am I the villain? Or was it just a moment of weakness? I hadn't done anything. Not really. But why did it feel like I had? Why did my body still tense every time I walked into a room and expected to see him there? Why did I feel a pull in my chest when I realized he wasn't? One afternoon, I almost confessed. I sat across from my best friend at a little cafe downtown, staring at my untouched cup of tea, my hands curled around the ceramic, trying to absorb its warmth. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to say, I think I've done something terrible. I wanted to ask, if nothing happened, why do I feel like my whole world is unraveling? But when I opened my mouth, the words wouldn't come. Because how could I explain something that I barely understood myself? So instead, I said, I just feel off lately. She tilted her head. Off how? I hesitated. Then I shook my head. I don't know. Just disconnected. She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. You've been alone too much. Maybe you need something for yourself. A hobby. A trip. Just some kind of change. I nodded. Pretended like that was the answer. But that wasn't it. I wasn't missing something. I was missing someone. And that was the part one couldn't admit. Not to her. Not to myself. Then, Chris left. A trip, just for a few days. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt unbearable emptiness. I told myself it was normal, that I was just too caught up in my own thoughts, too tangled in the loneliness that had always been there. But when I passed by his empty room, when I saw the little things he left behind, a jacket slung over the back of a chair, a book he had been reading on the coffee table, something in me clenched. It wasn't just that he was gone. It was that I missed him. Or maybe I just missed the way he made me feel. Seen, noticed, alive. And that scared me more than anything else. Have you ever found yourself in a situation that blurred the lines between right and wrong? A moment so subtle, so quiet, that at first, it felt like nothing at all, until you realized it had already changed everything. I used to think there were clear boundaries, that you knew when you were stepping over the line. But the truth is, it doesn't happen all at once. It happens in the little things. A glance held too long, a conversation that feels too easy, a touch that lingers just a second more than it should. You tell yourself it's nothing. But then you wake up one day and the nothing has become something. And you don't know how to go back. Chris came home from his trip and nothing was different. But everything was. He acted normal, casual, the same as before. And yet, there was something just beneath the surface. A quiet understanding between us. Neither of us spoke about that night. Neither of us acknowledged the weight of the moment we almost had. But it didn't disappear. It stayed there, lingering in the air, in the space between us. In the way we avoided being alone together. In the way my breath caught whenever I heard his footsteps down the hall. In the way my hands trembled when I reached for my phone, almost as if I expected a message that would never come. I never told my husband. There was nothing to tell. Not really. No evidence, no proof. No betrayal that could be traced back to a single moment. Just a shadow that never left. Chris remained in my life, but he became a ghost in it. We moved through the same spaces, but never let ourselves get too close. And sometimes I would catch him looking at me. Just for a second. Just long enough for me to wonder if he thought about it too. If he replayed it the way I did. If he questioned, like I did, whether it was real, or if it was just loneliness, twisting something empty into something dangerous. But I never asked, and he never said. Because some things are better left unsaid. Some moments, no matter how small, can never be undone. And some lines? Some lines are never crossed. But some are only visible once you've already stepped over them. So tell me, what would you have done? Was it just in my head? Or was it the start of something worse? Comment below. Share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories that make you question everything. Because they say regret fades with time. But some moments? They haunt you forever.